Welcome to the North Dakota Concealed Weapons License Instruction. First, a disclaimer. This information is not intended to be legal advice. Neither the North Dakota Office of Attorney General nor the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation is authorized to provide legal advice to the public. The contents of this training are intended to be for public information and education. Please consult with a private attorney for any legal advice you may require. The training and information provided is not intended to be firearms and/or tactical training. It is the minimum standard as set forth to obtain a North Dakota Class I concealed weapon license. Also, please remember about reciprocity. You must follow the law of the jurisdiction you are currently in. This means that if you travel to another state that honors a North Dakota concealed weapons license with a reciprocity agreement, you must follow the laws of that jurisdiction. So if you go to Minnesota or Wyoming or Arizona, wherever it is that you go, you have to know and follow their laws regarding where and how and what you can carry. A Class II firearm and dangerous weapon license allows the license holder to carry a firearm or dangerous weapon. In order to obtain a Class II license, the applicant need only take a written open book test. They are given 1 hour to complete the exam. No additional requirements can be mandated. A Class I firearms license allows the license holder to carry a firearm. They also automatically qualify as a Class II license holder. For a Class I license, the applicant must take a classroom presentation, that's this presentation, an open book written test, same as Class II, and go through a firearms proficiency course and shoot a specified qualification. In order to successfully complete this training program, the following requirements must be met: the classroom presentation, the written exam, and passing the firearms proficiency test. The written test is the same for both Class I and Class II licenses. A minimum score of 70% overall and 100% on the deadly force law of North Dakota is necessary to pass the written test. In other words, there's a lot of questions on deadly force law in the test, and you can't miss any of them. The firearms proficiency test. Successful completion of the firearm shooting or proficiency exercise requires demonstrated familiarity and safety with a firearm. The qualification is an approved course of fire. This course of fire, the target will be an 8.5 by 11 colored piece of paper. 1 point will be awarded for any shot that either completely or partially penetrates the colored paper. Pistol magazines will be loaded with 6 rounds of ammunition. Revolver cylinders will be fully loaded. Total number of rounds depends on the firearm. The first stage of the course of fire is shot from the 7-yard line. On the firing command, shooters will draw the handgun from a secured holster and fire 1 magazine or 1 fully loaded cylinder with the normal shooting hand. Reload and then fire 1 magazine or 1 fully loaded cylinder with the normal support hand. All rounds will be fired from a standing position. The time limit for this stage will be 45 seconds for a 5-shot revolver, 55 for a pistol or 6-shot revolver, 60 seconds for a 7-shot, or 65 seconds for an 8 or 9-shot revolver. A word of caution here, you must be safe in handling the firearm in order to pass the test. It's not just the points on the paper. So when you do this, if you can have both hands on the gun, whether you're shooting with your dominant side or your support side hand. Both hands can be on the gun, but unless you've practiced that way, keep that in mind. You don't want to try it for the first time on the test because I've seen a lot of people get injured that way. So don't recommend doing that. On the firing command for Stage 2, you'll be on the 15-yard line and you'll draw the handgun from a secured holster, fire one magazine or one fully loaded cylinder from a standing position, reload, and then fire one magazine or one fully loaded cylinder from a kneeling position. Time limit on this stage will be 50 seconds for a 5-shot revolver, and you can see the remaining times there. The minimum passing score for the course of fire on the target is 70%. And you can see the points illustrated there. Most people are shooting pistols or 6-shot revolvers, and that requires 17 points. So now we're going to go to chapter 22.102. I'm sorry, 62.101 on weapons in the North Dakota Century Code. And the first part, we go through the definitions of what the words mean. It's very important to understand what the words mean when we look at the law. So, as used in this title, unless the context otherwise requires, dangerous weapon includes any switchblade or gravity knife, machete, scimitar, stiletto, sword, dagger, or knife with a blade of 5 inches or more. Any throwing star, nunchucka, or other martial arts weapon, any billy, blackjack, sap, bludgeon, cudgel, metal knuckles, or sand club, any slungshot, any bow and arrow, crossbow, or spear, any weapon that will expel or is readily capable of expelling a projectile by the action of a spring, compressed air, or compressed gas, including any such weapon loaded or unloaded, commonly referred to as a BB gun, air rifle, or CO2 gun, and any projector of any bomb or any object containing or capable of producing and emitting any noxious liquid, gas, or substance. Dangerous weapon does not include a spray or aerosol containing CS, also known as orthochlorobenzmalonitrile, CN, also known as alpha chloroacetophenone, or other irritating agent, intended for use in the defense of an individual. Nor does the term include a device that uses voltage for the defense of an individual, unless the device uses a projectile and voltage, or the device uses a projectile and may be used to apply multiple applications of voltage during a single incident. Then the term includes the device for an individual who is prohibited from possessing a firearm under this title. Switchblade. This example, spring-operated blade that opens instantly when a release on the handle is pressed. A gravity knife can be opened solely by the forces of gravity or centrifugal force. A machete is a large, heavy knife used in Central and South America as a weapon or for cutting vegetation. Scimitar is a curved oriental saber or knife. The edge is on the convex side of the blade. Stiletto is a stabbing weapon that doesn't have a sharp edge with narrow shape to penetrate deeply. Sword, you can see what that looks like. And a dagger is a short knife-like weapon with a double-edged pointed blade. Throwing stars, examples, nunchucka, and the kubaton was thrown in here as an example of any other martial arts weapon, which is a fairly broad potential term. A billy club or a nightstick, blackjack or a sap is other covered lead with a flexible shaft. A bludgeon looks like something cavemen would use. Cudgel is a short, thick stick, usually oak or blackthorn. Metal knuckles, sand club, and slungshot. It's actually a knot made out of hemp rope with steel, lead, or brass inside the knot before tightening the knot down. Longbows, recurve bows, different kinds of bows. Spears, good distance weapons, maybe not very easy to conceal. And then these are some examples of some stun guns that deliver voltage but don't have a projectile. And they're emphasizing here that a dangerous weapon includes any weapon that will expel or is readily capable of expelling a projectile by the action of a spring, compressed air, or compressed gas. So things like a taser that would shoot a projectile have to be considered. A dangerous weapon does not include a device that uses voltage for the defense of an individual unless the device uses a projectile and voltage, or the device uses a projectile and may be used to apply multiple applications of voltage during a single incident. Then the term includes the device for an individual who is prohibited from possessing a firearm under this title. So if you're prohibited from possessing a firearm, you probably shouldn't be in this class. But then it would also make that a dangerous weapon for you under this title. Taser uses compressed gas to fire probes, does not use direct contact. I believe the taser company might indicate that it does use probes and fires them, but it also has a contact as a backup, so it can be used as a stun gun. It uses voltage, including projectiles and voltage, and may apply multiple applications of voltage during a single incident. Okay, spring or compressed air guns, whether loaded or unloaded. So even a little pink spring-loaded tiny plastic BB gun would be, that's unloaded, would still be considered a dangerous weapon. Any device that can launch or project any bomb or noxious substance. Further definitions. So direct supervision of an adult means that an adult is present in such close proximity so as to be capable of observing and directing the actions of the individual supervised. A firearm or weapon means any device that expels or is readily capable of expelling a projectile by the action of an explosive, and includes any such device, loaded or unloaded, commonly referred to as a pistol, revolver, rifle, gun, machine gun, shotgun, bazooka, or cannon. A gaming site means any room or premises licensed by the Attorney General or by a city or county governing body to conduct legal gaming operations. Government building means a building which is owned, possessed, or used by or leased to the state of North Dakota or any of its political subdivisions. A handgun means any firearm that is not designed to be fired from the shoulder, which has a barrel less than 16 inches long, and which is capable of firing by the energy of an explosive in a fixed metallic cartridge and exposed projectile through a rifled bore. The term includes all firearms that are designed to be readily modified between rifle and pistol forms if in compliance with the National Firearms Act. Law enforcement officer means a public servant authorized by law or by a government agency or branch to enforce the law and to conduct or engage in investigations or prosecutions for violations of law, or a retired public servant in good standing who, 1, was authorized by law or by a government agency or branch for at least 10 years to enforce the law and to conduct or engage in investigations or prosecutions for violations of law, or who was separated from service due to a service-related physical disability, and maintains the same level of firearms proficiency as is required by the Peace Officers Standard and Training Board for law enforcement officers, maintains the standards for qualifications in firearms training for active law enforcement officers as determined by the former agency of the individual in the state in which the individual resides, or maintains the standards used by a certified firearms instructor qualified to conduct a firearms qualification test for active duty officers in the state in which the individual resides. Has a photo identification card issued by a local law enforcement agency which identifies the individual as having been employed by a government agency or branch as a law enforcement officer, and indicates the individual has passed the firearms proficiency test within 12 months from the date of issue and has not been found by a qualified medical professional to be unqualified for reasons relating to mental health, or entered in agreement with a government agency or branch in which the public servant acknowledges a lack of qualifications for reasons relating to the mental health of the public servant. Other definitions. Machine gun, submachine gun, or fully automatic rifle means a firearm, mechanism, or instrument not requiring that the trigger be pressed for each shot, and having a reservoir, belt, or other means of storing and carrying ammunition which can be loaded into the firearm, mechanism, or instrument and fired therefrom at a rate of 5 or more shots to the second. The term does not include a binary trigger that fires 1 round upon the pull of the trigger and 1 round upon release of the trigger. Mentally deficient individual means any individual, minor or adult, other than a mentally ill individual who is so mentally defective as to be incapable of managing that individual's affairs, and to require supervision, control, and care for that individual's own or the public welfare. Plain view means the handgun is placed in such a location or carried in such a position as to be easily discernible by the ordinary observation of a passerby. In a motor vehicle, this includes being placed on the seat, dashboard, or in a gun rack, as long as the handgun is not covered or is in any other way concealed from view. Rifle means any firearm designed or redesigned, made or remade, and intended to be fired from the shoulder and using the energy of the explosive and a fixed metallic cartridge to fire only a single projectile through a rifled bore for each pull of the trigger. Secured. This is an important definition here. All of them are important, but this one definitely. Secured means the firearm is closed into the trunk or non-passenger part of the vehicle, placed into a closed and secure carrying device, rendered inoperative by the use of a trigger, hammer, cylinder, slide, or barrel locking device that renders the firearm incapable of firing until the device is unlocked and removed, or so disassembled or disabled as to be rendered incapable of firing. So if you look at the punctuation there, it's an or between these things. So any one of those things would be sufficient to render a firearm secured. Short-barreled rifle means a rifle having 1 or more barrels less than 16 inches in length than any firearm made from a rifle, whether by alteration, modification, or otherwise, if the firearm as modified has an overall length of less than 26 inches. Short-barreled shotgun means a shotgun having 1 or more barrels less than 18 inches in length, and any firearm made from a shotgun, whether by alteration, modification, or otherwise, if the firearm as modified has an overall length of less than 26 inches. Shotgun means a firearm designed or redesigned, made or remade, and intended to be fired with 1 hand below or behind and 1 hand in front of the breech, which uses the energy of the explosive in a fixed shotgun shell to fire through a smooth or a rifled bore, either a number of ball shot or a single projectile for each single pull of the trigger. Silencer means any device for or attached to any firearm which will silence or deaden the sound or natural report of the firearm when it is discharged. Just so you know, it's a bit of a misnomer. Suppressor is a better term to use because you will still hear the firearms report. Unloaded means the chamber of the firearm does not contain a loaded shell. If the firearm is a revolver, then none of the chambers in the cylinder may contain a loaded shell. So, semi-automatic firearm that has magazine in it, but does not have a round in the chamber, under this portion of the code would be defined as unloaded. Forfeiture of dangerous weapon or firearm by a person arrested and convicted of a crime. Any firearm or dangerous weapon used or possessed while in the commission of a felony or a misdemeanor involving violence or intimidation must be seized and, upon conviction and by motion, forfeited to the jurisdiction in which the arrest was made or the jurisdiction in which the charge arose. Except as provided in Chapter 2901 for stolen property, the forfeited dangerous weapon may be, pursuant to court order, sold at public auction, sold or traded to other law enforcement agencies or dealers, retained for use, or destroyed. notwithstanding any other provision of law, and subject to the duty to return firearms to innocent owners under this section, section 29-31.1-02, and is provided in Chapter 2901 for stolen property. All firearms, as defined in 62.10101, which are forfeited, recovered as stolen and unclaimed, or abandoned to any law enforcement agency of this state or a political subdivision of this state, including the Game and Fish Department, or that are otherwise acquired by the state or a political subdivision of the state and are no longer needed, shall be disposed of as provided in this section. Except as provided in Chapter 2901 for stolen property, this section does not apply to firearms that are seized and or confiscated and disposed of under Chapter 20.1-10. Sorry for all the legal mumbo-jumbo, but that's what this presentation consists of. So please don't commit crimes, and you won't have to worry about losing your weapons. Okay, 3A. Before the disposal of any firearm under this section, the agency with custody of the firearm shall use its best efforts to determine if the firearm has been lost by or stolen or otherwise unlawfully obtained from an innocent owner, and, if so, shall provide notification to the innocent owner of its custody of the firearm. An innocent owner may also notify the agency to claim a firearm. After notification, the agency shall return the firearm to its innocent owner, provided the owner submits sufficient proof of ownership, as determined by the agency, and pays the costs, if any, of returning the firearm to the innocent owner. Costs are limited to the actual costs of shipping to the innocent owner and associated costs from any transfer and background check fees charged when delivering the firearm to the innocent owner. If 6 months elapse after notification to the innocent owner of the custody of the firearm by an agency and the innocent owner fails to bear the costs of return of his or her firearm, or fails to respond to the agency notification, or if 6 months elapse after notice of a claim by an innocent owner and the innocent owner fails to bear the costs of the return of the innocent owner's firearm or take away the innocent owner's firearm, then the agency shall dispose of the firearm as provided in this section. Except as provided in subdivision B of subsection 3 or subsection 5, the agency shall dispose of the firearms that it receives under subsection 2 by sale at public auction to persons that may lawfully possess a firearm, and persons listed as firearms collectors, dealers, importers, or manufacturers under the provisions of 18 U.S.C. section 921, and authorized to receive such firearms under the terms of the licenses. The auction required by this subsection may occur online, on a rolling basis, or at live events, but in no event may the auction occur less frequently than once every year during any time the agency has an inventory of saleable firearms. The agency shall establish a procedure to notify persons of its auctions. The agency may not retain proceeds above that which are necessary to cover the costs of administering this subsection, with any surplus to be transferred to the general fund of the jurisdiction in which the agency is located, provided that an agency may be reimbursed for any firearms formerly in use by the agency that are sold under this section. Employees of the agency are not eligible to bid on the firearms at an auction conducted under this subsection, and except for the amounts authorized under subdivision C of this subsection, neither the agency nor its employees may retain any proceeds from any sale required by this subsection, nor may the agency or its employees retain any firearm required to be sold under this subsection.